G7, what I was telling is basically imagine now this is an essay topic. Imagine that this is a essay topic, that is it the right time to convert, or is it the right time to move from G7 to G11 or G12? This is the essay topic. And now you are the author. How will you present your ideas? Because it is from this angle, if you see, you'll also pick up an essay strategy from this. Now see the author how he has presented it. In the first paragraph, he presented just the context. What is the very recent context that happened with the G7? So he told like this Trump has proposed this because he postponed it first and then he proposed to expand it. So this is the context. Similarly, in essay also, whenever you are writing, so you have to give the recent context either, or you have to give a historical narrative, or you can give it through an incident or an scenario or an example. Like story you can present in the essay introduction. Then instead of logic of expansion, here you can keep a title as history of G7, because here everything is talking is about history of G7, but he didn't say history of G7. If you keep history of G7, it will be very cliche, like everyone writes that. So try to go for new creative subheadings that generates a curiosity. Actually, history of G7 suits this well, but he had kept it as logic of expansion, because history says what is the need for expansion. So what he talked here, similarly, he is saying first G7 is outdated, and then explaining how G7 came into picture. So he said G7 came into picture basically. So one second. Yes. So from here the history starts. So he says it's basically emerged just after 1970, and it is an organization of all the rich countries. This emerged. The main reason why G7 came is at that time there was an Israel and Arab war in 1973, and all this Europe, EU, US, all these countries, Netherlands, Japan, all these countries have supported Israel. So Arab people thought these countries are not supporting Arab states. So all of them came together and they have a common organization called OPEC. OPEC is Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. So these countries came together and imposed an embargo. Embargo means they put a ban that they will not export any oil products to these countries. And at that time, all the countries were heavily dependent on these Gulf countries or Arab countries for oil. So to counter that, so how to overcome this, they have formed an organization called G7. So that's how G7 came into picture. So that is what he was discussing entirely till here. Now then he said also there was an initiative at that time to expand G7 already once by Britain Prime Minister Tony Blair, by including BRICS first, and then similarly you all know after 1991 there is no more Soviet Union and Russia came in. So they thought it is better to include Russia also into G7. So that's how it became G8 in 1998. So in 1998 it became G8. But however, in 2014, Russia actually occupied some part of Ukraine called Crimea. So this is Crimean crisis. At that time, the entire EU and West were in opposition to Russia. So that is why they again removed Russia from that group, and again it became G7 from 2014. So this is basically history. And then he's giving economic circumstances. So what has prompted actually? What is the need? Is it, or you can keep this heading as, is G7 relevant now? Is G7 relevant now? So he's explaining what is the relevance of G7 by taking the economic angle. Then he's explaining how G7 countries only form a part of like third of global GDP and only quarter on the basis of MER. Like MER stands for market exchange rates. So that means only very less. And that too he's saying by 2050 it is going to be reverse. All the emerging countries, like he gave the names also, China, India, Indonesia, Brazil and Russia, all these emerging countries are going to get more weightage in terms of economy. So it is obviously a need of the hour to change G7 and expand it. So that is why he's explaining the need of expanding G7 in terms of economic. And then finally he's assessing. Here there might be a question like, if somebody asks, assess the performance of G7 so far. If this is a mains question, assess means you have to basically evaluate the performance of G7. So this entire paragraphs will be perfectly suitable to write that answer, because he is giving that assessment. So in the assessment, he's saying the success of basically are evaluated based on certain categories, and G7 has failed in many categories. So he's saying what are those categories it failed. First of all, he's saying like there are three events with respect to climate change, with respect to ISIS challenge. Here, Daesh is nothing but ISIS. And then next, he is talking about West Asia crisis. So in all these three, this entire group has failed. So how he has explained it very briefly, like how G7 countries proposed many plans but did not act on the ground. So that is one problem. And also G7 are main contributors to climate change. Despite that, they are not changing much. And then you can see about the West Asia crisis, how G7 countries like Russia or US, everyone is involved in Syria, Libya, all these countries. Because of that, refugees are coming out, and these refugees are going to Europe. So it is something, a problem that is created by Europe instead of solving it. So this is another problem. Similarly, so in this way, he evaluated and he finally said it is not reacting or not has done as expected from G7. So that is why then he is proposing for need for new institution. Like what is the need for new institution can be the question, and you can straight away use from here. So here he is saying right now the situation is very bad in the world, and we need a cooperation in the multilateralism. So all countries should come together. So right now G7 cannot do that, and apart from that, he gave three priorities. These three priorities are important from world and also for India. So what are these three priorities? He said first thing, first order is like uh, yes, here he has given it. Yes, first order is international trade, climate change, and COVID-19 crisis. Okay, yeah. So in the first order, he is asking to basically retain the existing institutions. So whatever institutions are there, like WTO, all these institutions are based on certain liberal values. So India and G7 by expanding it should try to protect it and make sure every country actually goes by rule of law. So that is important from first aspect. So that is how international trade, climate change, everything comes under addressing this. And what is the second order priority? What is second priority for India and world? Next thing is counter terrorism and counter proliferation. So counter terrorism, we all know that we are major participant and major driving force in international relations about counter terrorism. So apart from that, there is a new problem came in form of counter proliferation, and author is talking mainly about biological weapons. Why he has raised this is because now you see that there is an allegation that this coronavirus is something that is invented. So that is nothing but a biological weapon. So he wants to make sure in future there will not be any even kind of this thinking that a virus can be used to attack another enemy or another country. So all countries can come together and work on this thing, biological weapons convention implementation. And next, finally, regional issues, especially with respect to West Asia. So in ensuring the stability of West Asia, especially Afghanistan, Gulf, and West Asia. So here also all three can come together. So these are important points of G7. So now you can see, right, how he structured it. First he has presented context, then he explained history of G7, then he assessed what are the failures of G7, and then he gave why G7 needs to be expanded, and finally he gave what it should work for. So this way he neatly presented it right from introduction to way forward or conclusion. So this can be a kind of formula used for essay, even for mains also, mains answers. So this is something that I want to discuss. So in India-Pakistan relations, we have already seen the entire summary of historical framework or static framework. And then we have seen the issues as well, like how we have issues, especially with respect to Kashmir, and then all the border disputes, and then various angles like terrorism, and the Indus Water Treaty we have discussed in detail, how Indus Water Treaty is important, and then also China-Pakistan cooperation in Jammu and Kashmir, and the CPEC corridor at its core, and also like how Pakistan is obstructing India's moves in every other multilateral organizations like SARC, like UNSC, and then Afghanistan. So everywhere it is trying to play an opposite role. So these are the contemporary issues with respect to Pakistan that we have to address, or that frequently come into the picture whenever these bilateral relations are being talked of. Okay, so now we will see the next part, importance of India-Pak relations. So one important aspect what I found is basically with respect to India-Pak, many people suggest that now it is time for India to actually move from Pakistan. Like we don't need to actually talk to Pakistan. Many people say like Pakistan is no more an important threat for India. The important threat for India is China. So we have to focus more on China. And even if it is okay if we don't have any bilateral dialogue or any kind of discussion with Pakistan. So this is something majorly presented as a view by many scholars. But actually, it is counter to that. Why? Like why we need good relations with Pakistan? So that we are discussing here, because sometimes questions might come in mains asking like what is the importance of Pakistan relations, or why do we need to have a good relations with Pakistan, especially in the current political situation. So if there are such kind of questions, you also need to know why we need to have a good relations, because in issues we all know what are the issues and why we are in a bad state. So now we'll discuss importance. So first thing, for any great power, for any power actually to become an major power status, first of all its entire neighborhood should be safe and secure, and it should have peaceful relations with neighbor. Now let's take some examples. If you see us is now great power, right? Us is the biggest superpower right now. So if you see us, does us has any conflict with Canada, or does us has any conflict with Mexico? Imagine if us has conflict with Canada or Mexico, like how it will be a superpower, because it will focus more on its region than on the global issues. So similarly, we also have this problem. Like until unless India doesn't address this neighborhood problem, we always have to focus on the normal issues in the region. Let's say if another Pulwama happens, what will happen? Our entire diplomatic resources, our military, everything will be focused on Pakistan only, instead of focusing on global issues. And we are actually aiming for a global status. So this cannot be achieved until unless we have peace in the neighborhood. So that is why having good relations with Pakistan is very, very important for India, even in future also. And even if you imagine with China also, if we are treating China as a next strategic competitor, if you have an enemy like Pakistan, what will happen? China will automatically motivate Pakistan to have a dispute with India, so that India will always stay in the neighborhood only. Like it will not engage with Pakistan in same terms. It will be tied to its neighborhood, its region. So that is why having good relations with Pakistan is very, very important. Now, next thing, national security. So if we see, if there is any nation that directly threatens national security of India, that is from Pakistan. So because we are having completely an inimical kind of relations. So far we have seen all the big attacks from Pakistan itself, right from Parliament attack or Mumbai attacks, and no one knows like what happens in future also. If there is any such major attacks, what will happen to our economy? What will happen to kind of image of India? So all this will get affected. So that is another national security threat. So if we have good relations with Pakistan, it doesn't mean that we'll not have any attacks, but at least it will slow down slowly when confidence improves between two countries, and two countries try to see other countries or other threats, then they will start cooperating. So that is why from national security angle. Also next thing, another thing from national security, now I said like we have already kind of competition with China. At this time, do we need another competition with Pakistan? Because with Pakistan we have a conflict, we have to have a huge military. Like instead of focusing on navy, we are focusing on army. And nowadays many nations are moving towards navy. Even US has launched latestly the space force. Now it is moving into fourth dimension, and we are focusing more on army. Like we have second largest army in the world. So do we need that kind of forces right now? Why we need it? Because we have this kind of enemy relations with Pakistan. So if we have good and stable relations, we can actually focus that resources on other threats. So from that angle also it is important. Next thing, if you see Pakistan, Pakistan is especially like whenever we have this worst times or bad times, it is mainly during military rule in Pakistan. And in entire history of Pakistan, it is only barely like more 3 or 4 times the democracy has worked in Pakistan, and rest of the time it is completely military rule. And whenever there is military rule, it is always in against India, and all the wars have happened majorly under military rule. So that is why that military led Pakistan is even more dangerous. Another thing, we also know that there was a significant threat once upon a time that terrorism or extremism, religious extremism in Pakistan will take over the state. If that happens, what will happen to the nuclear weapons that Pakistan has? Now, right now, if it is democracy, okay, entire world will pressure Pakistan not to act in a rogue way or not to act in a way in which Pakistan wants. But if it is a terrorist element that occupied Pakistan, it can launch it at swish, right? So that way it will be even more dangerous for India. So that is why we need a stable Pakistan. Some people even say like right now Pakistan situation is worst. Like its economy is completely in the downside. It doesn't have even reserves to manage its economy. So right now it is asking for loans from IMF, China, and Saudi. Okay, and many people say this is the correct time for Pakistan, and Pakistan should actually even go into worst like angle and all. But does it really help India? Imagine now in the worst case, Pakistan goes into a situation like Syria. What is a major impact India will have? First thing, all the refugees will come to India only. So does India want that? Next thing, if a conflict like Syria happens in Pakistan, other countries also will involve. So in our entire left side neighborhood, if there is such an unstable neighbor with nuclear weapons, the first target will be India only. So there will be spillover effects on India. So that is why we never want completely an unstable Pakistan. At the same time, we also don't want very strong Pakistan. We want a normal Pakistan with which we want a good relations. So that is why unstable or military led Pakistan is also not suitable for India. Next thing I told yesterday with respect to Central Asia, India traditionally had very big connectivity with Central Asia. Even if you see all the Mughals, all the cultural relations that we have, everything we have with Central Asia. And Central Asia is not only from cultural aspect, but also now from energy and energy security for India. We talk about all this energy security. So for that also Central Asia is very important because Central Asia got huge reserves of uranium, first of all, okay, from the nuclear point. Similarly, it has got oil and natural gas reserves. And similarly, there is a huge market to which Indian products can be exported. All these are being actually getting damaged because of lack of connectivity. So this can be improved with the help of having good relations with Pakistan so that our western side of connectivity can be improved. So that is why also having good relations with Pakistan is important. Next thing, yesterday also I told like there are many complementarities between India and Pakistan, and we are just across the border and we can support each other in many angles. Like for example, whenever there is an onion crisis in agriculture produce, we import it even from Latin America, but not from Pakistan, where we find it very less cheaper. Similarly, basmati rice imports or cotton exports. Like example, we are major producer of cotton, and this cotton is majorly converted into textiles in Pakistan also. So Pakistan needs huge import of cotton, but it doesn't do that because we don't have good relations. So there is huge scope for bilateral relations, right from energy to trade. In energy, one more aspect I want to highlight: Pakistan has majorly energy deficit problem. Like it doesn't have enough electricity to supply to entire Pakistan right now. And India has a good energy surplus. And if we have energy corridor between India and Pakistan, we can actually export our energy to Pakistan. Similarly, uh, even Bhutan, like in Nepal and Bhutan, what we are doing, we are basically constructing hydroelectric plants. What they do, they generate electricity. We already have surplus. So what we'll do with the hydroelectricity? If we have connection with Pakistan, we can sell Bhutan's electricity through India to Pakistan. So this is the kind of potential that we have. So these are the potential which we are losing in regional cooperation and economic angle and various angle. So that is why also Pakistan is very important. And the next thing is people to people relations. You all know that we share many family ties, ethnic ties. Like many Sikhs are there on both sides. There is Punjab province in India and Punjab province in Pakistan also, and there is similar culture. And there are many families which were separated by the border. So if we have these ties, there is another potential which can be used in the form of diaspora or in the form of soft power and all. So that is another thing. And then finally, how can we demonstrate our responsible power status? India always says that India is not like China. Like in China is assertive power. They call China as assertive power. That means dominating everyone. And India is saying India is a responsible power. When you are responsible, that means you should treat the other partner with some caution, and you have to make sure you have good relations with Pakistan. Let's say now if India solves this problem of Pakistan and has good relations, there will be tremendous goodwill in the entire world also, in the entire countries, other countries, in support of India for competing against China. So that way also it is important. And the last thing, even from economic potential of medical tourism, right now many Pakistanis come to India for medical tourism. If you see on Twitter, like there were many incidents where Pakistanis have requested directly Sushma Swaraj for heart treatments and all, because India is a major hub for medical treatment. So in that aspect also there is huge scope for engagement. So in all these angles there is a huge potential for India Pakistan relations. And if India Pakistan relations are on a good side, even the SARC will get revived. There is an expectation that SARC will be able to even overtake ASEAN in terms of integration and economic trade between the countries. So right now what we are exporting to our neighbors is very less than what we export to very distant neighbors. So instead of concentrating on our nearby market, we are actually making products move to many distant countries. So these are the potential. And next, from here we'll discuss trade a bit, because trade was importantly in focus very recently, because there are two things that happen. One, there is a thing called MFN status. Okay, MFN status. So what is MFN? MFN stands for most favored nation status. Most favored nation status. So what happens is basically, according to WTO, there is a status called MFN. So when we give an MFN status to other country, that means you will not discriminate that country against any other country. Let's explain this with an example. For example, India has given MFN status to Pakistan. Okay, that means all the Pakistani goods that we are importing should be treated on the same way as the goods that we are importing from other countries. So you can't give special treatment to other countries and cannot give the same treatment to Pakistan. So that is meaning of MFN, most favored nation status. So two things that happened in recent past is India has given MFN status to Pakistan in very early, like around 2000s only we gave it. After 2003, when we are having some good relations, we gave to Pakistan MFN status. And Pakistan didn't reciprocate with the same MFN status to India. Even now Pakistan didn't give us any MFN status. So India finally realized that Pakistan will not act in reciprocity. Reciprocity means giving each other. Like if I give you something, I expect you also give the same kind of respect to me. So that is not there from Pakistan. Second thing, after Pulwama, we immediately stopped this MFN status to Pakistan. Second thing, after Pulwama, what we did is we have increased the import duty by 200%. So we have increased, right now whatever there is duty, we have increased to 200%. So these are the two important developments that happened in the trade. And then there are subsequent, I'll explain them. But before that, we'll discuss what is the trade volume between India and Pakistan. So if we see trade volume, formally, like officially acknowledged trade between India and Pakistan is 2.56 billion. And India is major beneficiary in this. You can see directly from the figures. Like if you see, India exports around 2 billion and imports only about 500 million. That means we have trade surplus with Pakistan. We don't have trade deficit here. We are exporting more and we are getting more advantage because of our trade with Pakistan. Next thing, this is formal. Informally, much of the trade goes through Dubai, and that will be of order of people, you know, unofficially estimate that it is about 6 to 7 billion. So 6 to 7 billion trade from India and Pakistan goes through Dubai. So we export to Dubai, and from Dubai, Pakistan will import. Similarly, Pakistan will export to Dubai, and from Dubai we'll import. And do you see any common sense here? Like, despite having neighbors, because of these inimical relations, we are just importing through Dubai, and Dubai is benefiting out of this trade. So this is a current situation. And in this trade where India has advantage, that also we suspended after this terrorist attacks. Like, whatever the trade is, that is completely we have removed it. And if we see the items that we generally export to Pakistan, those are mainly like cotton, cement, and then we export some agriculture commodities. And imports basically rock salt, and rock salt is basically used in fertilizers, all these parts. Okay. And next thing, another important with respect to trade is, our trade actually will cost very less if we move it through land, because we share a very long land border. But despite that, we trade through sea. So sea constitutes 80% trade. So that is another important problem in trade. Okay, so this is from statistical aspect of trade relations. Now, as we discussed, we'll follow up with other developments after Pulwama attack in February 2019. So immediately after Pulwama attack, as I said, we have suspended Mfn status. Second thing, we have increased our duty on imports by 200%. And then another thing happened on August 5. Like on August 5, 2019, we also diluted Article 370. You all know that. We have removed Jammu and Kashmir state and made it Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh Union territories. So Pakistan responded with removing or with destroying whatever the less trade that is remaining after we impose the duties. What it said, will not even trade with India itself. They closed everything. And from there, it completely got zero. And that informal trade I told, right, through Dubai, that got doubled. So that is what it is benefiting, and nobody else. And apart from that, Indian government also took a major decision. Like it said, uh, if you remember in the when we are discussing history aspect, I told in 2003, Atal Bihari Vajpayee started some confidence building measures, and part of that I told, a trade can be done on the LOC. That means Jammu and Kashmir people on the LOC border and Pakistan occupied Kashmir people both can trade with each other on LOC, and that was there till now, but it was also suspended. And it used to be a zero duty trade. That means no tax will be done on those trade, and those trade is basically in forms of like local produce, like Kashmir saffron, apples, almonds, or all these kind of local products only will be exported and imported, that too based on zero duty. But Indian government suspended even that. Why? They gave three reasons. First thing, LOC trade is being used for smuggling weapons for Jammu and Kashmir insurgency. Second thing, narcotics. And third thing, fake currency. This is real. This is a real threat that is there because of LOC trade. Why? Because these Pakistani occupied Kashmir traders basically use the same vehicles which are transporting goods to also transmit weapons to other side of India border. So this was an issue from many years, but now instead of addressing that issue, we have completely suspended the trade. But it seems like around 10,000 people of Jammu and Kashmir are completely, their employment is based on this trade, and now their employment was also gone. Article 370 also diluted. So now what should they do? I mean, like, I'm explaining the worst kind of situation, like how it affects if we cancel the trade. I'm not criticizing the government decision, but these are the issues that happen. Like many people suggested, this kind of issue can be addressed by keeping a full body scanner. So instead of you check every vehicle, you'll have metal scanner. Now is 2020. Like, we have all the technologies. We can do all the scanning. Like if you see European countries, European Union, they have free border, and everyone can go, everyone can cross, even the goods vehicle, without even stopping. If they are doing, how, why can't we do the at least small part of trading on LOC? if not the entire India-Pakistan border. And we have suspended that also, saying that until unless we have full security measures, we will not start the trade. So that is also done. So right now, there is no trade between India and Pakistan after this. That is why we are saying this is a dead low in India-Pakistan relations. And then finally, the other issues, apart from that, what happened in the recent past is Kulbhushan Jadhav case. If you remember, there is an Indian guy called Kulbhushan Jadhav, and he was arrested at Pakistan and Iran's border. Okay, and Pakistan arrested him at that border and took to Pakistan and established uh, terrorism charges on him or spy charges on him. He said he is spying, that is an Indian spy agent spying for India in Pakistan, and put an inquiry and finally awarded directly death penalty without giving him civilian court access. That means only military court arrested and it decided that a death penalty should be given, and it just put him in the jail. So India immediately went to ICJ. ICJ stands for International Court of Justice. Okay, International Court of Justice. And International Court of Justice is an organ of United Nations. So this is also important. So it's an organ of United Nations. So both have presented their arguments, and finally ICJ gave its verdict in favor of India. So what it said is basically, ICJ said every person under certain conventions like Vienna Convention or other diplomatic conventions, every person who is arrested either for spy or terrorism charges needs to give a fair hearing in civilian court. Only then, based on that, penalty should be given. So he said that military death penalty should be stopped and he should be prosecuted under civilian court. So this way, the judgment was given in favor of India. So this is another important issue between India and Pakistan. This also played out. And then you all know like how India is putting pressure on Pakistan through FATF. FATF is Financial Action Task Force. So there we are trying to basically put pressure on Pakistan to act on terrorism. Yes. So next important, most important event of entire India-Pakistan relations for this year is Kartharpur Corridor. Why this is important? First of all, I told like we are not even trading anything between India and Pakistan. We have completely came down from 2.5 to almost to zero. Okay. And I said this is a near low for India-Pakistan relations because we went to war after Balakot. But despite that, nobody imagined that Pakistan and India will open a corridor for religious pilgrims. And this precisely happened in November 2019. So this is very sensitive issue for Sikhs. Okay. So what happens is basically, you all know Guru Nanak, right? Guru Nanak is founder of Sikhism. So he used to live in this Punjab province in the erstwhile British India. So not British India, even before that, at medieval India. So during that time, he was born in India in a place called Dera Nanakana Sahib. So that is an Indian side. And finally, he went to the other side. He went to the other place and died there. So that place is Kartarpur, and that is presently in Pakistan. So his death place and his birthplace both are very important pilgrimage sites or religious sites important for Sikhism. So many Sikhs didn't had access to this Kartarpur corridor till now. They, if they want to visit that, all they can do is go to the border and see the temple or that Kartarpur, uh, whatever the temple for Sikhism is there, that they can see only through binoculars. So that was the stage, and it is very important issue for Sikhs. So that is why this was a project that was launched in 2006, and from then negotiations were going on, and finally India and Pakistan agreed to open a land corridor. That means a land bridge kind of thing will be arranged between border on either side, and pilgrims will be passed or will be allowed to go to other side, visit the shrine, pay their respects and come back without even a passport. So that is the intention of this project, and I'll show you the map to better make you understand this. So if you see this, this is Dera Baba Nanak. This is where other important religious institution of Sikhism. That is where Guru Nanak was born. And this is Kartarpur. And this is Ravi River. So just across this river, there are two corridors with a distance of around few kilometers only. So right now, we are building or connecting these two corridors through a special arrangement where people can now, instead of seeing this only through binoculars, they can go visit that temple and come back. So this is historical development. Why historical? Like many people even called it as coming down of Berlin Wall. And you see the significance of comparison. I said in during the Cold War, there was a Berlin Wall constructed between West Germany and East Germany, and it separated people from accessing each other. Similarly, here also, because of this partition, there is an artificial boundary that was created between the families which are there on either side. Because on either side, they have Sikh families, they have Sikh religious institutions, and earlier it used to be a combined Punjab province. So that kind of was done by a artificial partition, and this Kartarpur corridor, for the first time, has broke down it and established a bridge. So that is why it is a historical movement in not only India-Pak relations but also in humanitarian aspect also. So that is why it was compared with that. And then we have discussed the importance here, as you can see in the slide points also. And next thing, other importance of this is everyone expected that because of this positive effect, India and Pakistan relations can further improve. How? Like there are similar to this Kartarpur, there are many religious places in Pakistan which Hindus and Sikhs usually pay respects to. Like there are many Hindu temples. Like for Saraswati, there was temple. Some for goddesses also there were. There is a Shakti Pit also in Pakistan, and it is a very famous religious site for Hindus. Similarly, for Muslims from there, there are many Sufism sites in India, and there are many famous mosques in India where Pakistani Muslims also want to visit. Okay, so that is why many thought if this is established, next step is to actually enable similar kind of thing for other religions and other religious sites. So this way, if we progress, the people to people relations can be improved. And once people to people relations can be improved, political relations can be automatically improved. So that is why it is thought of a very important, significant uh, thing in India-Pakistan relations. But however, it stayed as only a blip in the relations. This was done good, well and good, established, corridor was done, everyone was moving, but India and Pakistan were at the same stage as before only. And why? Because there were some concerns also with corridor. And the main concern is Khalistani movement promotion by Pakistan. So what is this Khalistani movement? So Khalistani movement is basically a Sikhism movement demanding separate region for entire Sikhism or Sikh people, and this region they call it as Khalistan. So they want entire Punjab of India, Punjab and some part of Haryana and also some part of Pakistan to be named as Khalistan, and they want to get away from India. This used to be, and it is not something every Sikh supports it, but there are certain extremists who support this ideology. And who is promoting this? This is something actively promoted by Pakistan. So now Pakistan is actually using Kartarpur corridor, and recently there was an incident where it put the posters of an extremist leader of this movement, Khalistani movement, there, and encouraging people to actually go for these kind of activities. So whenever people come to Pakistan, they are no more under jurisdiction of India. So Pakistan is actually indoctrinating or encouraging them to go for these kind of movements. So this is nothing but kind of security threat for India. So that is another concern. So that is why we are also very cautious and we are not moving in the same pace as we are expecting the relations to move on positive side. So this is about Kartarpur corridor. So this is on a whole about India-Pakistan relations. And now we'll see like way forward or what suggestions we can give to improve India-Pakistan relations. First thing, Bollywood and cricket diplomacy. Like you all know, we have very good Bollywood connections, and Hindi is something language that is shared in entire Pakistan and northern India. So Bollywood films are a super hit films there. Our TV series will be watched there. Many singers from Pakistan are singing there. There were many actors also before. So there is a huge connection in Bollywood. So Bollywood is something which we can promote to better relations. So that is one thing. Similarly, if you see, cricket is also a very good thing. If you know, there are many Indian fans for Wasim Akram, and similarly for Shoaib Akhtar. Similarly, there were many cricket leaders who people from Pakistan who actually love Indian cricketers. And if you know, there was also a match in 2005 cricket match where Pakistani president came for cricket match, and after the cricket match, it converted into a bilateral summit. So you can see the potential, right? So these are nothing but soft power tools. So these are the soft power tools which we can use to improve people to people relations, because we can't improve political relations straight away. So we can work on lower aspects like people to people relations, economic relations. If we work on this, and if once they are base is strong, automatically political relations will improve. Why? Because politics will act on the impulses of people. If people are demanding we should have good relations with India, or Pakistan is demanding good relations with India, and India is demanding good relations with Pakistan, automatically relations will improve. For example, if you see in May election, in May 2019 election, what was the issue? Balakot strikes was issue. They said if Pakistan attacks, we'll destroy Pakistan. That's it. We are promoting nothing but a kind of enemy image. Instead, if it is a positive image from people, if they demand it, leaders will also act. So that is why this is another important aspect, soft power. Next thing, carrot and stick. So if we see with India and Pakistan, what is this carrot and stick? First of all, so carrot means basically incentive. Carrot means incentive. That means you are giving something good, appreciation, rewards, awards to people to act on their good intentions. Stick means you are punishing them. That means punishment and rewards. So if we see India and Pakistan policy, either we go with carrot or with stick. That means either we go full on cooperating with Pakistan, or we go on bombing them, or we go on threatening them. But we never combined both. So that is another important issue. If you see right now what is going on, we completely cut off trade, we completely cut off engagement with Pakistan, we do Balakot strikes, we punish them wherever we can do, like FATF and everything. Have we ever supported them in the form of carrot? Like for example, COVID-19 crisis is there. Did we support them? Or for example, there is a problem with military, but there is no problem with people, right? So why can't we support people directly using incentive? For example, like there was a problem with respect to electricity. So why can't we provide during the demand? Why should we cut LOC trade? Because LOC trade is something that benefiting people, not the leaders, right? Not the military. So we have to combine both carrot and stick. Yes, whenever there is terrorism incident, you punish it with force, but also encourage them to act on a good intentions and democracy by also providing help to people on equal terms on economic side. So that is carrot and stick. So we can try both instead of one. So that is another suggestion. Similarly, third thing, it is more or less related to the second suggestion. Separate people from Pakistan deep state. So right now what we are doing is India is treating entire Pakistan as one thing. Like if there is a terrorist incident, we are punishing entire Pakistan. That means if we stop trade, it is punishing both political leaders, military, terrorists, and also people of Pakistan. So instead, actually, all the people are not supporting terrorism against India. So we can actually maintain good relations with people and separate these incidents and punish only those terrorists. If you see with US, for example, let's take an example of US policy towards certain countries like Iran. Is it going to punish everyone? First of all, whenever there is a problem, US will sanction the leaders, military leaders. It will put some sanctions, and then if they don't listen, then it will cut off economic trade ties. So why can't we do same thing? Why can't we punish only terrorists and leaders like through military actions, and at the same time provide economic relations with Pakistan? So that is about separating people from Pakistan deep state. So here Pakistan deep state is nothing but Pakistan military, because major power is with Pakistan military. And fourth thing, same thing, like we can improve people to people ties. With that, confidence will be built. What is the important aspect now we are lacking? That is confidence. Right now, we don't trust each other. We treat each other with suspicion. So we can improve this confidence only by having examples of this train communication or bus routes, or if you see this medical tourism, where there was an example of a heart problem child was given medical visa immediately by India and was arranged an operation here, and she successfully went back. So that was a good people to people connection move. So those kind of medical tourism, health kind of sharing data, or common fight against COVID-19, or climate change. If you see next climate change, the Himalayan glaciers melt will have major impact on both Pakistan and India, and both can actually come together and work. And these will improve people to people relations. So that will translate into good relations. So this is another issue. And the last suggestion is divide and solve issues. So instead of combining everything and trying to solve them, try go step by step by dividing them. For example, I said we have Jammu and Kashmir issue, we have land border issue, we have Sir Creek issue, everything. So instead of directly targeting Jammu and Kashmir, why don't you try solving smaller issues? Like with Gujarat and Sindh province, I said Sir Creek is the problem. So it is not that emotional, right? If you give some land to Pakistan, or Pakistan gives some land which they are claiming to India, no one would object. Like no one will have certain emotions like what we have with Kashmir. So try to solve that. So once that is done, there will be a confidence, and then you can move to next issue. Or for example, next issue is terrorism. Like Mumbai attacks, whoever are the terrorists, if Pakistan can show some action on them, and India can start dialogue. So that is one step. So this way, we can separate economics, we can separate politics, we can separate culture, we can separate terrorism from each and every issue, and work slowly so that our progress can be made in India Pakistan relations. So these are something that you can use in conclusion for any answer. Like these are some ideas, or you can also take some from current affairs or newspaper. So this is about whole on India Pakistan relations. Okay, so very quickly I will summarize from here in Telugu, and then we'll move to Afghanistan. So for Afghanistan, I will give a brief overview today. We'll not discuss much. We'll discuss everything with slide tomorrow. So yeah, coming back to this in Telugu, like yes. So here, as I said, we have discussed so far only issues with respect to India and Pakistan. But సారీ, మనకు ఇంపార్టెన్స్ కూడా ఇండియా పాకిస్తాన్ మధ్యలో రిలేషన్స్ అనేవి పాజిటివ్ గా ఉండడం కూడా అంతే ఇంపార్టెంట్ అన్నమాట, ఇష్యూస్ కాకుండా. సో ఆ ఇంపార్టెన్స్ ఏంటి అనేది డిస్కస్ చేద్దాం. ఫస్ట్ థింగ్ ఏంటి, నేను చెప్పినట్టు ఇండియా గ్రేట్ పవర్ స్టేటస్ అచీవ్ చేయాలి అంటే, అంటే ఏ పవర్ అయినా కానీ సూపర్ పవర్ అవ్వాలి అంటే ఫస్ట్ దాని చుట్టుపక్కల ఉన్న ప్రాంతం పీస్ఫుల్ ఉంటేనే కదా వేరే దాని మీద ఫోకస్ చేసేది. జస్ట్ లైక్ అవర్ హోమ్, లైక్ ఇఫ్ యూ హ్యావ్ కాన్స్టెంట్ ఫైట్ విత్ అవర్ నైబర్స్, మన పక్కన వాళ్ళతో ఎప్పటికి ఫైట్ ఉంటే మనం పెద్ద థింగ్స్ మీద ఫోకస్ చేయలేం. సో సిమిలర్ టు ఇది అంతే. ఇప్పుడు ఇండియా గ్రేట్ పవర్, ఇండియా మేజర్ పవర్ అంటారు మోడీ గారు. సో అది అచీవ్ చేయాలంటే ఫస్ట్ ఆఫ్ ఆల్ పాకిస్తాన్ తో మంచి రిలేషన్స్ ఉండాలి కదా. సో అది ఉన్నప్పుడే అది అచీవ్ అవుతుంది. సో అది ఇంపార్టెన్స్ అనమాట. నెక్స్ట్ థింగ్, మనకు మేజర్ థ్రెట్ వచ్చి పాకిస్తాన్ నుండే, అండ్ పాకిస్తాన్ త్రో నేషనల్ సెక్యూరిటీ అడ్రస్ చేయడం చాలా ఇంపార్టెంట్. సో దట్ మన డిఫెన్స్ ఫోర్సెస్ కానీ మన న్యూక్లియర్ ఫోర్సెస్ కానీ యాక్చువల్ స్ట్రాటజిక్ థ్రెట్స్ మీద ఫోకస్ చేయొచ్చు. అది ఎప్పుడు సాధ్యం అవుతుంది, మనకు గుడ్ రిలేషన్స్ విత్ పాకిస్తాన్ ఉన్నప్పుడు. అండ్ థర్డ్ థింగ్, మనం ఎప్పుడు పాకిస్తాన్ నాశనం అయిపోవాలి, పాకిస్తాన్ అసలు ఉండొద్దు, పాకిస్తాన్ లో ఎంత బాగాలేకపోతే అంత బాగుంటది అన్న ఇమేజ్ లో ఉంటుంటాం. కానీ అది యాక్చువల్ గా మన కౌంటర్ ప్రొడక్టివ్, అంటే మనకే ఎక్కువ ఎఫెక్ట్ అవుతుంది. ఎందుకు అంటే అన్స్టేబుల్ పాకిస్తాన్ ఈజ్ మోర్ డేంజరస్ దెన్ ఏ స్టేబుల్ పాకిస్తాన్. సో స్టేబుల్ పాకిస్తాన్ ఉంటే ఏమైతుంది, నీకు అక్కడ లీడర్ ఉన్నాడు, రేపు పొద్దున ఏమన్నా యాక్టివిటీ అయినా టెర్రరిజం అయినా యూ కెన్ పనిష్ హిమ్. But if suppose tomorrow there is civil war and Pakistan is completely like Syria, like where there is no one leader, and an organization like ISIS came to Pakistan, now imagine what will be the position of India. Like it will be disaster for India, because one thing, people will, అది జనాలందరూ అక్కడ నుండి మూవ్ అయ్యి ఇండియాకి వస్తుంటారు. సో అదొక పెద్ద రెఫ్యూజీ క్రైసిస్. మనం ఒక రోహింగ్యాస్ వస్తేనే తట్టుకోలేకపోతున్నాం, బెంగాల్ నుండి అస్సాంకి వస్తేనే ఎన్ఆర్సీలు చేస్తున్నాం, ఆ ఎన్ఆర్సీలతో ఇంకా పెద్ద ఇష్యూస్. ఇక పాకిస్తాన్ నుండి వస్తే ఇంకేం జరుగుతుంది. సో అది కాకుండా ఆ టెర్రరిస్ట్ యాక్టివిటీస్ లీడర్స్ ఉంటే వాళ్ళ నుంచి పాకిస్తాన్ ఆల్రెడీ న్యూక్లియర్ వెపన్ స్టేట్. సో న్యూక్లియర్ వెపన్స్ టెర్రరిస్ట్ ఎట్లా యూజ్ చేస్తారు, వాళ్ళకేం ఒక ఎథిక్స్ ఉండవు, ఒక కోడ్ ఉండదు, లేకపోతే ఒక కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్, ఒక లా ఉండదు. వాడు ఎప్పుడు ఇష్టం ఉంటే అప్పుడు నొక్కొచ్చు బటన్. సో అందుకని అన్స్టేబుల్ కానీ మిలిటరీ డామినేటింగ్ పాకిస్తాన్ కానీ ఇండియాకి చాలా డేంజరస్. సో అందుకని ఇండియా పాకిస్తాన్ తో రిలేషన్స్ పెంచుకుంటే అప్పుడు టెర్రరిజం కానీ మిలిటరీకి కానీ ఎక్కువ స్కోప్ ఉండదు పాకిస్తాన్ లో. సో ఇప్పుడు ప్రస్తుతానికి పాకిస్తాన్ ఎందుకు మిలిటరీ ఎందుకు డామినేట్ చేస్తుంది పాకిస్తాన్ లో, ఎందుకంటే పాకిస్తాన్ మిలిటరీ షోయింగ్ ఇండియా as a threat, and ఆస్కింగ్ ఫర్ హ్యూజ్ ఫండ్స్ అండ్ రిసోర్సెస్. సో అట్లా గుడ్ రిలేషన్స్ ఉంటే అది కూడా తగ్గుతుంది. నెక్స్ట్ థింగ్, కనెక్టివిటీ చూపెట్టాను మీకు ఇంతకు ముందు. లైక్ ట్రెడిషనల్ గా ఇండియాకి చాలా మంచి కనెక్టివిటీ ఉండే. ఈ సిల్క్ రోడ్ కానీ, ట్రేడ్ రూట్స్ కానీ, మనం యూరోప్ వెళ్ళాలన్నా ఇదంతా త్రూ పాకిస్తాన్ ఉండేది ఒకప్పుడు. అండ్ ఇట్ హ్యూజ్లీ బెనిఫిటెడ్ అస్. రైట్ నౌ ఆల్సో మనకు మన ట్రేడ్ పెరగాలన్నా, మన పొటెన్షియల్ పెరగాలన్నా సెంట్రల్ ఏషియాతో కనెక్టివిటీ చాలా ఇంపార్టెంట్. సెంట్రల్ ఏషియాతో మనకు ఇంతకుముందు చెప్పినట్టు ఎనర్జీలో యురేనియం కానీ, ఆయిల్ అండ్ న్యాచురల్ గ్యాస్ కానీ, మన ప్రోడక్ట్స్ ఎక్స్పోర్ట్ చేయడానికి మార్కెట్ కానీ, పెద్ద హ్యూజ్ ఆపర్చునిటీ ఉంది అక్కడ. కానీ ఒకటే మెయిన్ రోడ్ బ్లాక్ ఏంటి అంటే పాకిస్తాన్. ఎందుకంటే ఇట్ డినైస్ ద కనెక్టివిటీ అండ్ ల్యాండ్ బార్డర్ ఇస్ చీప్ కనెక్టివిటీ. సో వీఆర్ ట్రయింగ్ టు అవాయిడ్ దాట్ బికాస్ ఆఫ్ పాకిస్తాన్ ప్రాబ్లమ్. ఇమాజిన్ ఇఫ్ యూ హ్యావ్ గుడ్ రిలేషన్స్ విత్ పాకిస్తాన్, ప్రాజెక్ట్స్ లైక్ తాపీ పైప్ లైన్ లాంటివి ఎన్నో చేయొచ్చు అనమాట. సో అది ఇంకొక ఆస్పెక్ట్. సిమిలర్ గా మనం చూస్తే బైలాటరల్ రిలేషన్స్ కానీ, ఇప్పుడు నేను చెప్పినట్టు ఎకనామిక్ ఆస్పెక్ట్ లో ఇండియా పాకిస్తాన్ ట్రేడ్ చేసుకోవచ్చు, ఆ ట్రేడ్ ఇంప్రూవ్ అవుతుంది. సిమిలర్ గా పాకిస్తాన్ నుంచి భూటాన్ కి, పాకిస్తాన్ నుండి బంగ్లాదేశ్ కి, బంగ్లాదేశ్ టు పాకిస్తాన్ త్రూ ఇండియా, ఇండియా కెన్ బికమ్ మేజర్ ట్రాన్సిట్ కారిడార్ అనమాట. ఎందుకు, ఇప్పుడు మీరు చూస్తే సార్క్ లో ఉన్న అన్ని కంట్రీస్ కి ఎవరితో బార్డర్ ఉంది? ఒకటే ఒక కంట్రీ, మెయిన్ గా ఇండియా. సో ఇండియా కెన్ బికమ్ a మేజర్ ట్రాన్సిట్ హబ్ అనమాట. సో దాట్ విల్ బెనిఫిట్ ఇండియా అండ్ ఆల్సో అదర్ కంట్రీస్. అండ్ టుగెదర్ మనం అందరం రీజియన్ లాగా డెవలప్ అవ్వచ్చు. ఇప్పుడు EU చూస్తే అదే కదా కాన్సెప్ట్. సో అందరు కలిసి డెవలప్ అయింది కాబట్టి దే ఆర్ వెరీ సక్సెస్ఫుల్ అండ్ దే హ్యావ్ మోర్ డిప్లొమాటిక్ పవర్ ఆల్సో ఇన్ వరల్డ్. సో దాట్ వే సార్క్ కెన్ బి బికమ్ ఇఫ్ వీ హ్యావ్ గుడ్ రిలేషన్స్ విత్ పాకిస్తాన్. అండ్ దెన్ వీ హ్యావ్ అదర్ ఆస్పెక్ట్స్ లైక్ పీపుల్ టు పీపుల్ రిలేషన్స్ కానీ, ఇండియా ఒక రెస్పాన్సిబుల్ పవర్ గా గ్లోబల్లో డామినేట్ చేయాలన్నా కూడా ఒక సక్సెస్ఫుల్ రిలేషన్స్ విత్ పాకిస్తాన్ విల్ హెల్ప్ అస్. ఎందుకంటే పాకిస్తాన్ మన సైడ్ ఉంటే మనకి ఇంకా పెద్ద కాంపిటీటర్స్ లేరు. జనరల్ గా ఇండియాకి అసలు ఎనిమిసే ఎక్కువ లేరు మేజర్ గా గ్లోబల్. ఉన్నదల్లా మన చుట్టుపక్కల ఉన్న ఇద్దరే. సో వాళ్ళు తప్ప మనతో ఎనిమి రిలేషన్స్ కోరుకునే పెద్ద కంట్రీస్ ఏం లేవు. అందులో పాకిస్తాన్ తో సాల్వ్ అయినట్టే. సో అందుకని ఇండియా పాకిస్తాన్, రైట్ ఫ్రమ్ స్ట్రాటజిక్ రీజన్స్, ఎకనామిక్ రీజన్స్, అండ్ ఫ్రమ్ global power status reasons, all these reasons, even cultural and people to people aspects also, India Pak relations అనేవి significance are important. So this is about significance of good India Pak relations. Okay, so next trade relations తర్వాత recent issues ఏంటి? సో ట్రేడ్ రిలేషన్స్ మీరు చూస్తే ఫస్ట్ ఆఫ్ ఆల్ మనకు పాకిస్తాన్ కి 2.56 బిలియన్ ట్రేడ్ ఉంది. ఆ ట్రేడ్ లో కూడా ఇండియాకే అడ్వాంటేజ్ ఎక్కువ ఉంది. ఇండియా ఎక్స్పోర్ట్స్ మోర్ దాన్ ఇంపోర్ట్స్. బట్ హవెవర్ ఆఫ్టర్ పుల్వామా సర్టెన్ ఇష్యూస్ అయినాయి. ఆ ఇష్యూస్ ఏంటి అంటే ఇప్పుడు ఆ 2.56 ఉన్న బిలియన్ ట్రేడ్ కూడా ఆల్మోస్ట్ జీరోకి వచ్చేసింది సర్టెన్ యాక్టివిటీస్ వల్ల. అది ఎట్లా స్టార్ట్ అయింది స్టెప్ బై స్టెప్ చూద్దాం. ఫస్ట్ థింగ్, పుల్వామా అవగానే ఇండియా ఏం చేసింది? MFN స్టేటస్ అంటే మోస్ట్ ఫేవర్డ్ నేషన్ స్టేటస్. సో మోస్ట్ ఫేవర్డ్ నేషన్ స్టేటస్ అంటే ఏంటి? ఇదేంటి అంటే WTO, వరల్డ్ ట్రేడ్ ఆర్గనైజేషన్ అనే ఒక సంస్థలో ఉన్న కంట్రీస్ అన్ని ఒక అగ్రిమెంట్కి వచ్చాయి. దాని ప్రకారం ఏంటి అంటే ఎవ్రీ కంట్రీకి నువ్వు MFN స్టేటస్ ఇవ్వాలి. MFN స్టేటస్ ఒకసారి ఇస్తే నువ్వు ఆ కంట్రీ నుంచి వెళ్ళి ఏం ఇంపోర్ట్ చేసుకున్నా ఆ కంట్రీ ప్రోడక్ట్స్ ని వేరే ఇంకో కంట్రీ నుంచి వెళ్ళి కూడా ఇంపోర్ట్ చేసుకుంటారు. ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ పాకిస్తాన్ నుంచి వెళ్ళి రైస్ ఇంపోర్ట్ చేసుకుంటున్నాం. సిమిలర్ గా మయన్మార్ నుంచి వెళ్ళి కూడా ఇంపోర్ట్ చేసుకుంటున్నాం రైస్. కాకపోతే మయన్మార్ మీద ఏమో 10% ట్యాక్స్ వేస్తున్నాం, పాకిస్తాన్ మీద 30% ట్యాక్స్ వేస్తున్నాం. ఓకే, ఇట్లా వేయొద్దు. MFN స్టేటస్ ఇస్తే యూ కెనాట్ ట్రీట్ దెమ్ డిఫరెంట్ గా ట్రీట్ చేయలేవు అనమాట. సేమ్ గా ట్రీట్ చేయాలి. ఇది లీగల్ ఆబ్లిగేషన్ ఒకసారి MFN ఇస్తే. సో అలా ఇండియా ఆల్రెడీ పాకిస్తాన్ కి MFN ఇచ్చింది ఎప్పుడో 2006-8 ప్రాంతంలో. అండ్ పాకిస్తాన్ కూడా ఇండియాకి MFN ఇచ్చేది ప్రాసెస్ లో ఉండే. కానీ డిస్పైట్ 10 years లో ఇప్పటి వరకు కూడా ఇవ్వలేదు. అది ఇవ్వకపోగా ఈ టెర్రరిస్ట్ అటాక్ జరగడం వల్ల ఫైనల్ గా ఇండియా ఏం రియలైజ్ అయిందంటే ఇంకా పాకిస్తాన్ మనకేం ఇవ్వదు, ఉల్టా మనమే ఇంకా బెనిఫిట్ చేస్తున్నాం. సో ఉన్న MFN స్టేటస్ కూడా తీసేస్తామని చెప్పి ఆ MFN స్టేటస్ పాకిస్తాన్ మీద తీసేసింది. సో తీసేసినాక ఇంకేముంది, లీగల్ గా పర్మిషన్ వచ్చిందిగా, డైరెక్ట్ 200% డ్యూటీ ఇంక్రీజ్ చేసిండు. ఇన్స్టెడ్ ఆఫ్ క్యాన్సలింగ్ ట్రేడ్ 200% డ్యూటీ ఇంక్రీజ్ చేసిండు పాకిస్తాన్ ఇంపోర్ట్స్ మీద. సో ట్రేడ్ ఆటోమేటిక్ గా తగ్గింది. ఇది తగ్గిన వెంటనే ఏమైంది, August 5, 2019 డిసిషన్ మీకు తెలుసు, ఆర్టికల్ 370 అయింది. సో ఆ తర్వాత పాకిస్తాన్ ఆ ఉన్న ట్రేడ్ ను కూడా ఆపేసింది. సో దాంతో కంప్లీట్ గా ట్రేడ్ రిలేషన్స్ అనేవి వెంట ఇంటూ డెడ్ లో. ఇవి కాకుండా LOC దగ్గర కూడా ఒక ట్రేడ్ జరుగుతుంది. LOC దగ్గర డైరెక్ట్ గా బార్టర్ సిస్టమ్ లో జరుగుతుంది. అంటే లైక్ డాలర్స్ లో కానీ రూపీస్ లో కాదు, లైక్ ఇది అమ్మితే అది తీసుకోవడం అనమాట. లైక్ తెలుసు కదా యాన్షియన్ టైమ్స్ లో ఎట్లా మన మమ్మీ మనం కేజీ ఇస్తే వాళ్ళు ఇంకో కేజీ అవి ఇస్తారు. సో అలా అక్కడ ఉన్న ట్రైబల్ పీపుల్, అక్కడ ఉన్న లోకల్ పీపుల్ అక్కడ పండే పదార్థాలనే ఎల్ఓసి మీద ట్రేడ్ చేస్తున్నారు అనమాట. అది కాన్ఫిడెన్స్ బిల్డింగ్ మెజర్స్ కింద అటల్ బిహారీ వాజ్పేయి లాంచ్ చేసింది. అది సక్సెస్ఫుల్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్. అది కూడా స్టాప్ చేసినాం. అంటే ఆ స్టాప్ చేయడానికి కొన్ని లెజిటిమేట్ రీజన్స్ కూడా ఉన్నాయి. ఆ రీజన్స్ ఏంటి అంటే, ఒకటి వెపన్స్ స్మగుల్ చేస్తున్నారు పాకిస్తాన్ సైడ్ నుండి, ఇంకోటి డ్రగ్స్, నార్కోటిక్స్, తర్వాత ఫేక్ కరెన్సీ. సో ఈ 3 ప్రాబ్లమ్స్ చూపెట్టి ఆపేసినాం. సో యాక్చువల్గా అయితే టెక్నాలజికల్ సొల్యూషన్స్కి వెళ్ళాలి, బట్ ప్రస్తుతానికైతే టెంపరీగా అది కూడా సస్పెండ్ చేసినాం. సో ఇలా 4 అయినాయి. ఇవి అయిన తర్వాత నెక్స్ట్ ఇంపార్టెంట్ ఇన్సిడెంట్ కుల్భూషణ్ జాదవ్ కేస్. సో ఇది కూడా సెన్సిటివ్ ఇష్యూ. ఒకవేళ కుల్భూషణ్ జాదవ్ ని రేపు పొద్దున ఉరిదీస్తే పాకిస్తాన్ లో, దట్ విల్ బి బిగ్ ఇష్యూ ఇన్ ఇండియా. ఎందుకంటే ఒక ఇండియన్ ఏజెంట్ అక్కడ చనిపోయిందంటే ఇంకా ఎమోషనల్ గా రెస్పాన్సెస్ వస్తాయి. అండ్ ఇట్ ఈస్ రైట్ రెస్పాన్స్ ఫ్రమ్ ఇండియా, బికాస్ అన్ ఇండియన్ ఈస్ బీయింగ్ హ్యాంగ్డ్ ఇన్ పాకిస్తాన్ బికాస్ హీఈస్ అరెస్టెడ్ ఫ్రమ్ ఇండియా. పాకిస్తాన్ ఇరాన్ బార్డర్ లో వర్క్ చేస్తుండే అనమాట. ఈ కుల్భూషణ్ జాదవ్ అనే అతను ఒక నేవీ పర్సన్, ఎక్స్ నేవీ పర్సన్. అతను ఇరాన్ పాకిస్తాన్ బార్డర్ లో కన్స్ట్రక్షన్ కంపెనీలో పనిచేస్తుంటే పాకిస్తాన్ అరెస్టెడ్ హిమ్ అండ్ టుక్ హిమ్ టు పాకిస్తాన్ అండ్ సెడ్ అతను ఒక స్పై అని చెప్పి అతని మీద ఈ అలిగేషన్ పెట్టి ఏమని టెర్రరిజం చార్జెస్ పెడుతున్నాడు అని చెప్పి మిలిటరీ కోర్టే చేసింది. మొత్తం విత్ ఇన్ డేస్ లో చేసి డెత్ పెనాల్టీ అవార్డ్ చేసింది. సో వెంటనే ఇండియా నోయింగ్ దిస్ వెంట్ టు ఐసీజే. ఐసీజే ఇస్ నథింగ్ బట్ ఇంటర్నేషనల్ కోర్ట్ ఆఫ్ జస్టిస్కి వెళ్ళింది. సో ఇంటర్నేషనల్ కోర్ట్ ఆఫ్ జస్టిస్ లో ఫైనల్ గా జడ్జిమెంట్ ఇండియాకి ఫేవర్ గా వచ్చింది. అదేమని చెప్పిందంటే, ఇతన్ని సివిలియన్ కోర్ట్, అంటే సివిలియన్ కోర్టులో నీకు ఏమవుతుంది, ఒక లాయర్ని పెడతావు, ఎవ్రీథింగ్ ట్రాన్స్పరెంట్గా ఉంటుంది. సో ఆ కోర్టులో అట్లీస్ట్ లీగల్ ప్రొసీడింగ్స్ జరిగి ఆ తర్వాత జడ్జిమెంట్ ఇవ్వాలని చెప్పి ఐసీజే చెప్పింది. సో ఇది అనదర్ ఎమోషనల్ ఇష్యూ. ఇప్పుడు మరి పాకిస్తాన్ ఐసీజే మాట విని చేస్తుందా చేయదా అనేది ఇంకా స్టిల్ is something is going on. No action has been done yet. So this is another important latest development. ఇవన్నీ కాకుండా మేజర్ డామినేటింగ్ డెవలప్మెంట్ ఈ ఇయర్ లో జరిగింది ఏంటి 2019 లో అంటే కర్తార్పూర్ కారిడార్. దాని సిగ్నిఫికెన్స్ ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ చేస్తా, ఇంపార్టెన్స్ ఏంటి అనేది. ఇంపార్టెన్స్ ఏంటి అంటే దాన్ని బెర్లిన్ వాల్ తో కంపేర్ చేస్తారు. ఆల్మోస్ట్ బెర్లిన్ వాల్ ఎలాగైతే ఈస్ట్ జర్మనీ సిటిజన్స్ ని, వెస్ట్ జర్మనీ సిటిజన్స్ ని ఎలాగైతే సపరేట్ చేసిందో, మన ఆర్టిఫిషియల్ పార్టిషన్ బౌండరీ కూడా సిక్కులను అలాగా సపరేట్ చేసింది. ఒకటి సిక్కులను సపరేట్ చేసింది, 2 వాళ్ళ ఫ్యామిలీస్ ని, వాళ్ళ కల్చరల్ టైస్ ని. అవి కాకుండా వాళ్ళకి చాలా సెన్సిటివ్ రిలీజియస్ సైట్స్. సో వాళ్ళకి చాలా అత్యంత ముఖ్యమైన గురునానక్ చనిపోయిన ప్లేస్ పాకిస్తాన్ లో ఉంది, అది కర్తార్పూర్ కారిడార్. గురునానక్ పుట్టిన ప్లేస్ ఏమో దేరా బాబా నానక్, అది ఇండియాలో ఉంది. ఇవి 2 జస్ట్ కొన్ని కిలోమీటర్స్ దూరంలోనే ఉంది. కానీ వీళ్ళకి ఎప్పుడు వాటికి యాక్సెస్ లేదు, ఎప్పుడు వాళ్ళు వెళ్ళి విజిట్ చేసుకునే పరిస్థితి లేదు ఇప్పటి వరకు. సో అందుకని ఎప్పటి నుంచో జరిగిన చర్చల వల్ల ఫైనల్ గా ఇంత దారుణం ఉన్న రిలేషన్స్ లో కూడా ఒక పాజిటివ్ ఆస్పెక్ట్ ఇదే అనమాట. అందుకనే కర్తార్పూర్ కారిడార్ ఇంపార్టెంట్. సో ఈ కర్తార్పూర్ కారిడార్ లో ఫైనల్ గా ఒక కారిడార్ బిల్డ్ చేస్తుంది. కారిడార్ అంటే ఒక అగ్రిమెంట్, ల్యాండ్ బ్రిడ్జ్. దాంట్లో ఏంటంటే ఇండియా నుంచి వెళ్ళి పిలిగ్రిమ్స్ ని ఎవ్రీ డే వెళ్ళి వాళ్ళు విజిట్ చేయొచ్చు వితౌట్ వీసా, వెళ్ళి విజిట్ చేసి మళ్ళీ బ్యాక్ రావచ్చు. సో అది ఆ అగ్రిమెంట్ చేశాం. కాకపోతే దీంట్లో కూడా ఒక ప్రాబ్లం ఉంది, మెయిన్ కన్సర్న్ ఉంది. ఆ కన్సర్న్ ఏంటి అంటే, పాకిస్తాన్ ఖలిస్తాన్ మూవ్మెంట్ ని ఇండియాలో చాలా రోజుల నుండి బాగా సపోర్ట్ చేస్తుంది, ఇండియాలో ఇన్స్టెబిలిటీ తీసుకురావడానికి, ఇండియాలో ఒక ఎక్స్ట్రీమిజం మూవ్మెంట్ తీసుకురావడానికి. ఒకప్పుడు మీకు గుర్తుంటే బ్లూ స్టార్ అనే ఆపరేషన్ కూడా జరిగింది అమృత్సర్ గోల్డెన్ టెంపుల్లో. అది జరిపించింది ఇందిరాగాంధీ అనమాట. అంటే ఇట్లాంటి ప్రాబ్లమే ఉంటే ఆ టెర్రరిస్ట్లను ఫైనల్ గా ఎలిమినేట్ చేసినాం బ్లూ స్టార్ ఆపరేషన్ లో. సో అప్పుడు కూడా ఇదే ప్రాబ్లం, ఖలిస్తాన్ మూవ్మెంట్. ఈ ఖలిస్తాన్ మూవ్మెంట్ ఏంటంటే, సిక్స్ అందరూ వాళ్ళకి సపరేట్ ల్యాండ్, సపరేట్ కంట్రీ కావాలని కోరుకుంటున్నారు. అది ఎలా, ఇండియాలో ఉన్న పంజాబ్ తర్వాత పాకిస్తాన్ లో ఉన్న పంజాబ్ కొంత ప్రాంతం మొత్తం కలిపి సపరేట్ కంట్రీ అవ్వాలని చెప్పి. సో దీనికి పాకిస్తాన్ యాక్టివ్ గా సపోర్ట్ చేస్తుంది. అండ్ కర్తార్పూర్ ని మేజర్ గా ముందట పెట్టుకొని అక్కడికి వచ్చే సిక్కులందరికీ ఈ ఐడియాని ఇంకెక్కువ ప్రమోట్ చేస్తుంది. దానికి రీసెంట్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ ఒకటి న్యూస్ పేపర్స్ లో వచ్చింది ఏంటంటే, పాంప్లెట్స్ తర్వాత ఇమేజెస్ తో వాళ్ళు కర్తార్పూర్ కారిడార్ లో ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ చేస్తున్నారు అనమాట, హౌ ఖలిస్తాన్ మూవ్మెంట్ ఈజ్ ఇంపార్టెంట్, వాళ్ళకి ఎలా మోటివేట్ చేయాలనేది. సో అందుకని ఇది కూడా ఇండియాకి నేషనల్ సెక్యూరిటీ పరంగా చాలా ఇంపార్టెంట్. బట్ కాకపోతే సెంటిమెంట్స్ కూడా ఉన్నాయి కాబట్టి ఆ థ్రెట్ ని అడ్రస్ చేస్తూ ప్రస్తుతానికి కర్తార్పూర్ కారిడార్ నడిపిస్తున్నాం. సో ఇది కర్తార్పూర్ కారిడార్ ఇంపార్టెన్స్. అండ్ దీని నెక్స్ట్ ఇంపార్టెన్స్ ఇంకోటి ఏంటంటే, ఇది ఫ్యూచర్ లో ఇంకా కూడా చాలా హిందూ టెంపుల్స్ ఉన్నాయి పాకిస్తాన్ సైడ్. సిమిలర్ గా ముస్లిం సూఫీ టెంపుల్స్ ఆర్ సూఫీ మాస్క్స్ కూడా ఇండియాలో ఉన్నాయి. సో ముస్లిమ్స్ ఇటు రావచ్చు, అటు వెళ్ళడానికి ఇంకా అరేంజ్మెంట్స్ కి ఇది ఒక పాజిటివ్ స్టెప్ అవుతుందని చాలా మంది భావిస్తున్నారు. సో ఇది కర్తార్పూర్ కారిడార్ సిగ్నిఫికెన్స్. సో ఫైనల్ గా వే ఫార్వర్డ్. ఈ వే ఫార్వర్డ్ ఏంటంటే మనకు లైక్ ఇండియా పాకిస్తాన్ రిలేషన్స్ రాను ఒక గుడ్ నోట్ లో రాయడానికి అన్నిటికీ ఈ ఐడియాస్ పనికొస్తాయి. సో దాంట్లో ఫస్ట్ థింగ్ బాలీవుడ్ అండ్ క్రికెట్ డిప్లొమసీ. సో మీకు అందరికీ తెలుసు మనకు సేమ్ లాంగ్వేజ్ లైక్ ఇండియా అండ్ పాకిస్తాన్ షేర్, దట్ ఈస్ హిందీ అండ్ ఉర్దూ. సో మన ఫిలిమ్స్ బాలీవుడ్ ఫిలిమ్స్ అక్కడ మేజర్ మార్కెట్, అండ్ అక్కడ సింగర్స్ ఇక్కడ చాలా మంది పాడిన వాళ్ళు ఉన్నారు, అండ్ అక్కడ యాక్టర్స్ కూడా ఇక్కడ యాక్టింగ్ చేసిన వాళ్ళు ఉన్నారు. సో ఇలా పీపుల్ టు పీపుల్ టైస్ ఇంక్రీజ్ చేయొచ్చు. సిమిలర్ గా చూస్తే మనం క్రికెట్ డిప్లొమసీ కూడా, క్రికెట్ తో కూడా చాలా, క్రికెట్ ఎందుకంటే సేమ్ స్పోర్ట్ అండ్ ఫేమస్ పాపులర్ స్పోర్ట్ ఇన్ ఇండియా అండ్ పాకిస్తాన్. సో అలా కూడా ఇంప్రూవ్ చేయొచ్చు. అండ్ పాస్ట్ లో కూడా మెనీ ఇన్సిడెంట్స్ ఉన్నాయి ఇట్లా క్రికెట్ వల్ల బెటర్ అయినవి. సో అందుకని ఇవి యూజ్ చేసి ఇప్పుడు ప్రస్తుతం ఉన్న టైంలో పొలిటికల్ గా అయితే మాట్లాడలేము. సో కనీసం ఇవైనా స్టార్ట్ చేస్తే స్లోగా ముందటికి వెళ్ళొచ్చు. రెండోది క్యారెట్ అండ్ స్టిక్. క్యారెట్ అండ్ స్టిక్ ఏంటంటే బేసిక్ గా క్యారెట్ అంటేనేమో ప్రోత్సాహాలు ఇవ్వడము, అండ్ స్టిక్ అంటేనేమో లైక్ దండించడం. సో వాళ్ళకి ప్రోత్సాహాలు ఇవ్వడము, దండించడం రెండు జరగాలి సైమల్టేనియస్ గా, అప్పుడే రిలేషన్ అనేది ముందటికి పోతుంది. ఇప్పటి వరకు మనం చూస్తే జనరల్ గా ఏదో ఒకటే యూజ్ చేస్తుండే మేజర్ గా, రెండు కలిపి యూజ్ చేయలేదు. సో ఇది ఒక కైండ్ ఆఫ్ సజెషన్ అవ్వచ్చు. అండ్ మూడోది సేమ్, ఈ మనం అది అప్లై చేయాలంటే ఫస్ట్ ఆఫ్ ఆల్ పాకిస్తాన్ మొత్తంని ఒక ఎనిమి లాగా చూడకుండా మేజర్ గా మనకు థ్రెట్ కాజ్ చేసేది ఎవరు? టెర్రరిస్ట్. ఆ తర్వాత డీప్ స్టేట్ అంటే మిలిటరీ, ఎవరికైతే ఇంట్రెస్ట్ ఉన్నాయో ఇండియాతో వార్ అవ్వడం, ఎవరికైతే ఇంట్రెస్ట్ ఉన్నాయో వాళ్ళ మీద స్టిక్ తో ప్రయోగం చేయడం, పీపుల్ కి ఇన్సెంటివ్స్ అందియడం. సో ఇట్లా సపరేట్ చేసి మన పాలసీని అమలు పరచడం కూడా ఇంపార్టెంట్. అండ్ నెక్స్ట్ థింగ్, యాజ్ ఐ సెడ్, పీపుల్ టు పీపుల్ టైస్. అది ఎలా? లైక్ మెడికల్ టూరిజం ఇంప్రూవ్ చేయొచ్చు, హెల్త్ టూరిజం ఇంప్రూవ్ చేయొచ్చు, రిలీజియస్ ప్లేసెస్ ఇంప్రూవ్ చేయొచ్చు, ఇలా బెటర్ అవుతాయి. అండ్ లాస్ట్ థింగ్ వచ్చేసి, ఇన్స్టెడ్ ఆఫ్ మొత్తం ఒకటేసారి అన్ని ఇష్యూస్ ని డిస్కస్ చేయడము, లేదా పెద్ద ఇష్యూ లైక్ జమ్మూ అండ్ కాశ్మీర్ మీద ఫోకస్ చేయడం కన్నా చిన్న చిన్న ఇష్యూస్ ని సాల్వ్ చేసుకుంటూ, డివైడ్ చేసి సాల్వ్ చేసుకుంటూ ప్రోగ్రెసివ్ గా ముందుకెళ్ళడం అనేది ఇంపార్టెంట్ అనమాట ఇండియా పాకిస్తాన్ రిలేషన్స్ లో టు గో ఫార్వర్డ్. సో దీస్ ఆర్ కైండ్ ఆఫ్ సజెషన్స్ ఫర్ ఇండియా పాకిస్తాన్ relations. This also forms part of syllabus called policies of developed countries that have interests of developing countries like India. This is a syllabus part. Policies of developed and developing countries that have impact on India. So here, what is the policy of developed country? It is policy of US called Afghan peace process or exit from Afghan. So how it will have impact on India? So there might be a question, something like, if Taliban comes to power, or if Afghan peace process, due to Afghan peace process, US exits from Afghanistan, what are the implications for India? List out the implications for India. Something like this it will be. So there will be both, like one or two positive impacts also, if it goes well and good, like how it is there in peace process. If not, there will be huge negative impacts. So you need to know both sides. So that is one kind of area. Second thing, what is importance of Afghanistan? Because if we see map and all, Afghanistan is very far away. Like Pakistan is our neighbor. Usually people also consider Afghanistan is not even our neighbor, because many people think that Afghanistan doesn't share a boundary with India, but it is not true. Actually, if you see, Afghanistan has a small boundary with India. Can you see here? So this part is a boundary that India shares with Afghanistan. So Afghanistan is also a clear neighbor for India. However, we are not in real control of this territory. This is under Pakistan control. So that is why we don't have direct physical boundary with Afghanistan. But according to the map, or traditionally, we have connection with Afghanistan. Okay. So that is one thing. And next part, yeah, what is the importance of Afghanistan? So there are many importance, like we will see from different angles. One I will explain today, that is security aspect. Security dominates. Why? I told you, like Afghanistan, because Afghanistan has this Taliban and a kind of insurgency, where this insurgency has won both Russia and US. That is, Taliban made sure that Russia left Afghanistan, and now is also ensuring US to leave Afghanistan. And this Taliban has huge influence and religious backing by Pakistan. So because of this, there is one direct implication in the form of these terrorists and these support which Pakistan is doing on Afghanistan soil will be diverted to India, especially in Jammu and Kashmir, in the form of insurgency in Jammu and Kashmir, which will be a huge national security issue for India. That is direct one. Second thing, there are already certain domestic insurgency elements in Jammu and Kashmir. That is, there are domestic insurgents in Jammu and Kashmir. So they also will have a great motivation because they see an example where they have defeated US. So they will feel more emboldened to act against Indian state or Indian military forces. So that is indirect effect. So this way, this will have huge security implication. Third thing, from security aspect only, like now, if Pakistan doesn't have any issue with Afghanistan, where it will focus its all military and its resources directly with confrontation against India. So that is another thing. And many people say Pakistan got strategic depth in Afghanistan. What is strategic depth? Strategic depth means it is not important from GS, it is important from PSIR term. It is a PSIR term. Strategic depth. Strategic depth means if suppose tomorrow there is a war between India and Pakistan, and if you see Pakistan map, it is very small, like very narrow. Can you see here in the Pakistan how much thin it is in the width? So tomorrow if there is military confrontation, India can totally overrun Pakistan very soon. So if it has influence in Afghanistan in the form of Taliban or normally, these rulers or this military can go back to Afghanistan and can launch attacks again back. So this is called strategic depth. That means it has strategy to fall back on Afghanistan as a buffer or as a kind of territory here. That is one angle. Second thing, whatever India has good projects in Afghanistan, that can also be strategically destroyed by Pakistan here and can attack indirectly India. So these are main security or security aspects importance of Afghanistan for India. This is major driver for having stability in Afghanistan is an important priority for India.